Welcome to Scale Her Up, the Female Entrepreneurs Show with me, Brenda Hector. I'm a business growth specialist helping business owners to develop themselves and grow their businesses so they can achieve their goals and enjoy the lifestyle they dream of. I'm on a mission to revolutionise the entrepreneurial landscape for women in business. In every podcast episode, I interview someone who has an inspiring story or some great advice for women aiming to start or scale their businesses. If you're new to the show, take a moment to subscribe right now so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And please check out the previous ones. There's over 100 here. We have an awesome Facebook community. Just search for Scale Her Up and join in. And I'm delighted today to have Liz Clayton-Jones from Beehive Performance with me. Liz, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, well, thank you so much for inviting me, Bran. I'm delighted to be here.
So let's start with your business, Beehive Performance. What is it that you do?
I think I'm probably in common when we create our own businesses going, oh, how do I put this in words of one sentence, words of one syllable? But I think my business stems from the fact that my belief is that people are at the heart of every success. My favorite business quote is, you don't build a business, you build people and they build the business. So my work is at the heart of that. I combine years of experience working in both practical and research for employee engagement and high-performing teams. I'm an advanced strengths coach, and I bring all of that experience into play to create high-performing teams, high-performing businesses, to help people understand how to lead. And I do that both for organizational leaders, but also for project leaders, because I think sometimes our technical people, they don't get access to people leadership in the same way, and yet they have to lead people when they lead project. And so I will support them too. I work mainly in science research and manufacturing arenas, but do any team anywhere too.
Fantastic. And how long have you been doing that? When did you set up Beehive Performance?
So we formed in August 2019. So it's just over 6 years now. There's been lots of evolution through that time. We have moved in various different areas to make sure that we are providing a fully inclusive platform to teams. One of my evolutions was to move more into coaching women, helping them see that midlife in particular, let's use the other N word, so menopause, doesn't have to be a blocker. And really now thinking about how do we ensure that teams really understand, or people really understand, how to embrace difference. There's so much division in the world now, and it comes out in a micro level in teams, that we're worried about how our differences interplay. And sometimes we can make people wrong because they're different. And sometimes we embrace it. And that depends on our wiring as well and our cultural experience. And so we're expanding into how do we make sure that teams are fully inclusive for neurodiverse aspects of personality as well. So yeah, an evolution over 6 years, probably taking it away from a more traditional business as well into something that we've created from heart, not head.
Something that fitted better to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So why did you start?
That's interesting, isn't it? I think I had been toying with the idea of going solo. I had a 35-year corporate career, 31 of those years in one company, albeit in lots of different divisions and areas within that company, working across a region, getting some involvement at global level, and always just feeling that something was missing for me in terms of being able to be my authentic self. I'd become very much a corporate shape and had started to do some real work on self, should I say. And I think that comes to lots of women, particularly when children are getting older and you start to think, oh, that's all there is. But I didn't really have the courage at that point. I suppose I'd been in an institution most of my life. I was a boarding school kid. I then went straight from boarding school to university, straight from university into employment in corporates. So I haven't experienced freedom, shall we say, in what that looked like. So I didn't really have the courage to think that I could do this. So a door opened about 5 years earlier and I didn't walk through it. As it turned out, when the door opened the second time in 2018 with a end date of 2019, I was in a different position. My kids were much more adult, so a little bit more self-sufficient, a little bit less financially dependent. And I had a conversation with my husband, who's also always been self-employed, and said, it's now or never. There was nothing left in the organization where I was working that I wanted to do, because all the jobs that I wanted to do have been restructured. So I think sometimes people open doors. I was very much there's a door open, do I walk through or not? I know there's certain people that need a bit of a shove.
Was this a restructure? Was this?
So it was a restructure. And I had also reached an age where I could draw my pension early, which gave me financial security while I decided to play. And I've just not looked back. The opportunity, if I was to have my time again, I would have given myself the confidence to have walked through it 5 years earlier. But yeah, life has expanded exponentially in the 6 years that I have been out of corporate. And yet I'm still serving corporates with my full heart and soul. I'm just delighted to be able to do it from the outside.
So I'm gonna pick at something that you said there. You had financial security to let you play. Have you been playing for 6 years?
I think I took it very seriously to start with. I would say my first 2 years I wasn't playing at all. I thought I had to do it properly, whatever that word means. When we start to create our own business, I took a business coach for a few months. I was given some advice by people who had stepped out of business into consultancies and were earning a lot of money and saying, you need to do it like this. And I amassed a library of how to start your own business, how to run your own business, how to be a consultant, how to do this, all these books, and signed up for various online courses, which I sometimes attended. And during that time, I tried to write a strategy, tried to do my financial planning. And I'll be honest, I did them, but it was half-hearted and my soul wasn't in it. And I didn't really feel that I was creating something I loved. I just felt that I was creating something I can do. This is what I've done for many years in corporate. Oh, look, I'm creating exactly the same thing. And I had a bit of a wake-up call about 2 years in with some advice or some helpful listening from some wise women who'd done something their own way, who said, your business doesn't have to look like anything other than what you want it to look like. If you don't want to do a strategy, don't do one. You might find you are strategic, but you're doing it in a much more organic way. If you don't want to be the sort of person who goes into a business and leads with PowerPoint, could do it. And I think seeing that they had been successful in their own unique way gave me the confidence to say, okay, what do I actually want to create? Because I'd never even given myself breathing space after this long corporate career to think about what is it really that I want to create. And if anybody's listening who is just about to take the leap out of a long corporate career to start alone, I would say, give yourself some breathing space. Because my advice, the advice I was given was get straight on the horse. And I'd registered my business 6 days after I left a 35-year corporate career. And then I undid it all again 2 years later because I hadn't given myself that breathing space to think, what is it actually I want to create? How do I want to feel coming into business? How do I want my clients to feel working with me? What's the work-life balance, whatever those scales look like? What does that what do I want it to look like? Not what do people think it should look like? And there's lots of shoulds out there. There are so many shoulds out there, and quite often they contradict themselves. So my should is just don't do a should.
I think it's really common though. A lot of people that I've interviewed said, oh, I started and I thought this was what I was going to do. And then once I got going, I realized that those weren't the right customers for me. I was going to focus this way, or that wasn't the right service to deliver. So often you don't know until you start.
Yeah, and I think depending on your situation, you can be very fearful if you're not experienced in this area, or perhaps don't have somebody who's by your side doing it, in helping you with it in a much more pre-way than, oh, you should do it like this. I think some of it is fear. You think, I've got to do this, fearful of turning a client down. You're fearful of not having enough money to keep running the business or to run your family, etc. And I am the breadwinner in the family. There's a level of risk. And I think it's not until you can breathe into it more and understand, actually, what is enough money? It might not be, I'm not trying to make my corporate salary anymore. I'm just needing to make enough. My rationale for showing up for work is very different. All the work I do is from my heart, not my head. And sometimes that means I'm not earning very much. And I think my biggest step into bravery was the first time I turned a client down. And I lost 2 nights sleep over it. But there was a recognition that I had and I'd agreed a contract with them. So it was a scary step to make. I had gone through an iteration where I had scoped the work with the client, thought it's work I could do. And then they started to involve me with a couple of their more senior leaders. And I just got a vibe off them that these weren't my people and that I probably wasn't theirs. And it was a really discomforting sense of, gosh, we've gone down this route, I've signed a contract, and I don't want to be here. And I don't want to be doing this 6 months piece of work with this organization. Nothing wrong with them, they just weren't my people. And ringing them up and having a powerful conversation with them around a mutual separation ended up being a much less scary experience than my 2 days of losing sleep over it had made it out to be. And the release was very mutual. It was very friendly. They actually stayed in touch for quite a while after that. I put them in touch with somebody else who I thought was more their style. And they went on to do a very successful piece of work with that person. And I think that's what really made me consolidate okay, so what is it I want to create? Who are my customers? Who am I even? And how do I tell people who I am so that they either come to me or they go, oh, that's quite interesting, but not for us. And being okay with that so that every piece of work I do brings me joy and it means I can bring my very best self to the client. And I'm probably not going to not going to become a millionaire doing that.
But that's okay if that's not your goal. There's not
Exactly.
Often I think we adopt someone else's goal.
I think you're right. Yeah. And I think that's where some of the shoulds come from. We adopt goals either from people that we've seen do it well, or we've read a book, or indeed read many books. And I think that revelation that I can't do this piece of work with this client, it's just not resonating in the right way with me at all, made me look at what I'd been trying to create. And I realized I had probably £200 or £300 worth of unread business books that looked very nice on a bookshelf, but I realized I had absolutely no intention of ever reading them. So I bundled them all up and I donated them to a library that was giving service to startups and entrepreneurs, and said, you're welcome. These aren't for me. And started again in terms of not so much the work I was doing, but how do I explain who I am and what I do? And do that from my heart, not from my head, not from how do you run a business, but how do I want to work? And that has been the most powerful thing. So the last 4 years have been me playing fully authentically into who I am and what I've wanted to create, probably for the first time. Well, I was going to say since school, and then I realized that was boarding school. So probably since I was about 10.
Wow. So your success, what you want to achieve, is different from anybody else. So
Well, maybe not anybody else, but I think, and I think more and more, I say this women because that tends to be who I have networked with, but I also think a lot of men too, who choose to step away from corporate, realize that they want to create a life that has more in it than just work and money.
Yeah.
That we are finding that we can access heart so much more readily. And when work doesn't allow that, because perhaps a particular corporate environment is still very much in head and hasn't found heart as well yet, that it can feel very, very, it can dysregulate you. It can make you feel very unsettled. And you keep doing it because you need to, or you like the security and the finance and the pension or whatever. But if the opportunity comes up, some people are born entrepreneurs. I think that they are people I admire extraordinarily. I wasn't one of those. I was one of those who just got to a point where the corporate life I was living couldn't give me what filled me with joy anymore. And it had done, but that had gone. And also I was very aware that I'd become a very corporate shape and suppressed a side of my personality that wasn't desirable in that environment. Or you suppress your weird when you're in a corporate environment. And I think when you start to create for yourself, you get to step into who you truly are in a different way, because you're not the only person who sets the rules is you.
Yeah.
And by the way, all rules are made up, so you can make up your own ones. And as long as you're legal,
Yeah.
then anything should go. Create what comes from your heart and your joy. And that might mean that you are cutting out a certain portion of your clients, but the ones you get will be yours. There's room for all of us, and we'll all create something slightly different. And what we create then will people will be magnetized towards us and for who we are. 90% of my work, if not more, comes through referral, because people see that that's who I am and they recommend me to somebody else who sits in that arena. And what I bring is, maybe the models are the same, but the delivery is different. And the essence is different.
So let's talk about the menopause then, what you're doing around that. So it's not a core of your work, but it's something that you're passionate about.
Oh yeah, absolutely something I was passionate about. And this comes from a very personal experience. I had a really rough ride with my menopause. I'm post-menopause now. By the way, if you're perimenopause at the moment and listening to this, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Post-menopause is wonderful.
There is. There's the freedom coming through that, like coming out.
Absolutely. But I did have a very rough ride. I had 10 years of waves of symptoms. I think there's 44 common symptoms, and I think I probably ticked off at least 34 of those over the course of the 10 years. And I didn't get let me say, I had a very mixed experience with how that was seen within the workplace, very much in an organization where performance was everything. And therefore, any moment of lapse in that, I felt, and this was how I felt, would have been seen as detrimental. I'm not saying that's what the business was dictating, but the culture said, well, high performance. So you make it mean that you have to be on your game all the time. And of course, during perimenopause, your game changes quite considerably sometimes from day to day. At the end of that time, I really felt that as somebody who had a reasonably high profile within my business, I just wanted to talk about it. And it was before Davina McCall and her lovely documentaries and things. So we weren't really talking about menopause, although there was just a little bit of I think there'd been a documentary on BBC Two in 2018. Marianne Fostrup did a little bit of work on menopause. And I thought, I just want to go out there and tell these women that they're not alone. I've had a bit of a rough ride of it, and there's ways through it. And so I did an awareness webinar. I thought maybe 20 grumpy old women would come and join me. And we had 124 people join the call from all areas of the business, men and women, and people just coming along, graduates coming along to find out why their mum had got a bit weird. And it made me realize that support for women going through this, and indeed their men and their loved ones, their children, was something that I cared really deeply about. And if we're talking about high-performing teams, we need women who are going through menopause to be equally included and allowed to flourish during this slightly discombobulating time. Because if we're looking at gender equity in the boardroom and we're saying most board people are getting to that level at sort of 45, 50, 55, if we're going to get gender equity in the boardroom, we've got to help women get there and not give up because they're having a really rough time during menopause. And in the last 6 years, the menopause conversation has exploded, which is a really good thing. And many of the approaches rightly talk about looking after your holistic health, maybe offering nutritional solutions, maybe offering physical education or bodily physical solutions. Do this exercise routine and it'll change your life, or take these supplements and it'll be amazing, or go on HRT, it'll solve all your problems. And there's nothing wrong with any of those approaches. But I think what was missing for me was a real message that, by the way, you're not broken. You're just the same amazing person with the same amazing, unique talents that you've always been. It's just that right at this precise moment, your hormones are messing about with your brain energy and causing you some symptoms. You haven't gone away. And I really wanted to get that message out to women and empower them to stand in who they are and find their confidence again. And just say, yeah, okay, you're having some hot sweats, brain fog moment. You're still an amazing person who has capabilities beyond what you might imagine. And as a strengths coach, the assessment that I work with, Gallup's Clifton Strengths Assessment, gives you a profile of your innate talent that is unique to you. The way in which they assess means that you're never going to get an assessment that is reads the same as someone else's. So it's a way of just showing people, with a lot of research behind it, that you are a unique person. You have not only you have your unique DNA and your cultural experience and who you are, but you've got this incredible gift of talent that nobody else has. So why would you waste it because of menopause? So the work I've done with women is to help them stand in who they are and use that to help them find the solutions elsewhere that they might choose to have. If there's somebody phenomenally organized naturally and somebody who's really good at structuring a day, then, what is it within your passion and your goal? What turns you on? What do you want to experiment with? Maybe it's a yoga class, maybe it's a diet. You can go and find that, but don't do something that's not going to work for you. So let's have a look at your talent and see what turns you on, what do you want to play with? So we go back to this playing thing again. My background is in research, and the concept that I love most is experimentation. And I think when we are women going through menopause, we can either feel a failure or we can be made to feel one, because we don't feel the same as we've always felt. We don't need any more of that. So to go to a class and realize you hate it, or to go on a diet and fall off the wagon, that can just add to this sort of sense of failure. So the approach that I've taken with the ladies that I work with is one of experimentation. There's a lovely quote that is, "You can't fail an experiment. You can only get an unexpected outcome." So we basically go back to key stage 3 science, which is, what do you want to try? What's your hypothesis? So if I try this, I'll feel better, as a very simple statement. Okay, so try it for a certain length of time. Try it for a month and just document how you feel. So you're writing up your experiment. And if at the end of that month you feel better, do it again. If at the end of that month you think, why did I bother? Try something different. So you've learned something. So for me, I didn't enjoy yoga. I don't enjoy yoga. And it's partly based in experience of going to classes that were probably not my yoga classes, but it was a blocker for me. And I tried it, and every single time my whole body was like, oh, I don't want to go to this class, which is the sort of, you don't really want to feel like that. I've actually found that my biggest release is walking. and art. So I paint. I don't paint particularly well. I'm never going to make a living out of it, but the expression really lifts me. And I can lose myself in that and come out of it feeling completely reset. And I think but it's whatever works for you. I'm really rubbish at sticking to things. I have a rebellious streak that says the moment someone gives me a timetable, I want to do something different. So a diet per se doesn't work for me. Thinking more holistically about eating a Mediterranean diet and therefore putting more fish and olive oil and vegetables into my diet is okay. And I'll still eat half a packet of biscuits and I won't make myself wrong over that. It was oh, look, what made me do that? What was the trigger? What made me think that eating half a packet of biscuits was a good idea? And then just doing the exploration. So for me, I guess in the menopause arena, but also with other clients, it's like, what do you want to play with? Let's treat it as an experiment. Even if I'm working with somebody and perhaps their personality is clashing with the team, it's what do you want to play with? What do you want to, let's experiment with changing just one approach that you make for a month and see what the outcome is. So it doesn't feel like, oh, I have to change myself. It says, oh, I'm just going to play for a month to see what happens. And if at the end of that month, people's behavior towards you has shifted, you go, okay, that works then, doesn't it? So I'll keep doing it. I just love experimenting.
Coming from a scientific background myself, that's a blinding flash of the obvious for me. We call that a BFO. Yeah, experiment. And like the idea, like a diet or something, that feels like I've got to stick with this forever. And I have to change myself to be the kind of person that eats like this. That doesn't work. But yeah, experiment with it and see if it has an impact. And then if you get the results that you want, you'd be more likely to continue with it rather than,
Yeah, and I think we can do a month, can't we? And it's the age-old thing. Nowadays, if you're like me anyway, especially through my perimenopause when I was not sleeping well, you'd pick up your phone and 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd be scrolling away on Instagram. And because you'd searched for one thing, one time on menopause, you flooded with, buy this, do this, it'll change your life. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, you make purchases that aren't terribly wise. Now, if this is being watched on a video, you can't see enough of me to see my body shape. I am not an athlete. I'm quite a normal middle-aged lady. So this will make you very laugh. The best midnight purchase I made was to 2 young men in California who did an online parkour course to help you with your core and flexibility. And I saw flexibility and core muscles, and for some reason in the middle of the night thought doing some starting level parkour was going to be the thing to fix me. Now, this is just hilarious. Fortunately, it was only $45 to sign up, so I didn't waste a fortune. But we do this. We go on and we'll buy a supplement and we'll buy 3 months worth, 6 months worth because it's on a deal. Yeah. Or the adverts, by the time you've scrolled down to make the purchase, you've accidentally added 50 million things onto it. The thing about experiments is you buy a month's worth. That's all you do. You buy a month's worth, take it for a month and see what happens. If you really don't see any change, you've only lost a month's worth of investment. You haven't gone further than that. And then you can go, and if it really works for you and you feel uplifted, or you can start to see the changes happening, go ahead and buy another month.
And
but don't do it first.
It's not only relevant to getting through the menopause. This is relevant to business. A lot.
Yes, absolutely.
This shiny object think, oh, we have to do that. But actually, no. Try it for a short period of time, measure the results and see if it's worth it.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I apply it to all sorts of things. I've recently started, over lockdown, I qualified as a physical intelligence coach, which is much more about the sort of holistic approach to making your entire body work in service of performance. And I played with a few little bits into introducing it into my teamwork, but I have started to be braver and experiment more. And I will work with the client, say, look, I want to run an experiment with your team. Are you up for it? And if they say yes, we run the experiment. And fortunately, I'm going to touch some wood here. So far, it's been really successful. It's lifted the environment that we're in into a different space. It's got people thinking about people at a different level. But I'm very upfront with the client when I use it and say, look, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm planning to do with your team. It might feel like an experiment for you, or I will be very honest. So this is the first time I've tried this.
Yeah.
Are you up for it?
And for me as well. Yeah.
And I think that then enhances the work you do. But also for me, I want to be totally honest with my client when I'm doing something that is absolutely my sweet spot and I can do it with my eyes shut and do an amazing job. Or do I have your trust to play? Let's try something different. And not trying to pretend I'm an expert in something that I'm still learning.
Yes.
And I think that authenticity and honesty can be very helpful. But it also allows people to step away or say, no, thank you. Can you just stick to what you normally do? If they're not feeling ready for that.
Back to the menopause then. I'm really interested in what businesses can do that, because I think a lot of people leave the work, step down in terms of their role, step back. And I'm really keen to know what businesses can do to keep good people in and support women through a challenging time so that they're still there doing well and, getting to the top level and whatever. What do you think?
Yeah.
What's the strategies that businesses can take here?
Yeah. So I think many businesses think they need to have special menopause policies. And if that helps, by all means do it. I think if businesses have a flexible working policy and a desire to elevate diversity and inclusion and equity, they've probably got enough already within an organization to just understand this is another aspect of inclusion, another aspect of equity. Just because somebody is having hot flushes and brain fog doesn't mean they're broken. It just means that they may need some adjustment for a period of time. They are not written off forever. There may be that maybe for some people going through a really heavy support, a very heavy set of symptoms, that they do need to step back for a little while, but not to have that write off their career forever. However, for most of us, the term reasonable adjustment springs to mind, but I think what people tend to read into that is, I'll give them a fan because they're being a bit hot. What I think is the most powerful thing is to open up conversation with a direct line manager. I've actually found speaking to younger men as line managers easier than speaking to women of the same age, because of course we're all different. We all experience menopause in different ways. If there's 44 common symptoms, we're never going to get exactly the same at the same time. And there's 10% of very lucky women who will pass through menopause with barely a blip. And if your middle-aged female line manager happens to be one of those 10%, they may not have the same, their understanding may not be there either. So it's that relationship, I think. How do I ask for what I need?
What I'm hearing is that actually those of us that are going through it or have been through it have got an experience of it that we assume is what everybody's having.
Yeah.
It's maybe easier to talk to a younger man who has no experience and who has to just learn from the person in front of him who's...
Yeah. I found the most understanding conversation I had when I was in business was with my 47-year-old director, who actually got really curious because he wanted to find out what his wife was going to experience when she got there. And it became a very mutual conversation. But I think it's creating a balance. At the end of the day, if you're in work, there has to be a level of delivery. Sadly, that's just the way the world of work works. So in having conversations, what I have helped both line managers and women to do is have a conversation that finds the mutual middle ground, that doesn't ask for the earth and expect the earth, but doesn't also negate the fact that changes might need to happen. And they might not be the ones that are very comfortable to talk about. If you're somebody in the early stages of perimenopause who's starting to have very heavy irregular periods, a seat near the ladies' toilets would be really helpful. changing facilities. So there are some physical things that might need to be in place. There might be a possibility, and it won't work in all jobs, but there might be a possibility. Look, there are days when the sleeplessness is awful. Can I start at 10 o'clock? It doesn't mean my day may become shorter, but maybe I can do 10 till 6 because it becomes more appropriate for what I can deliver. Maybe it's an opportunity to scale back part-time for a short period of time, but it's a mutual conversation. I still want to give to the business. I can't necessarily always give in the way that I always have done, but what can we make work so I can still work to the very best of my ability and give you my highest performance whilst being supported through this transition? And I think it's those open conversations around what's possible, rather than both parties standing on an I'm right level, wanting all the concessions or no concessions whatsoever. It's where what can you do that's also in service of the work? And that's the mutual conversation. That's where it becomes win-win rather than somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose.
I've just come off an interview with someone, and we were talking about the juggle as a working mum or as a business owning mum. And actually, if you take it back to that period earlier on in a woman's career where, that flexible working, to be able to work around the kids and be able to, if somebody's ill, to work from home so that you can be at home if they're not in school, and the working around the school run and that, and giving an employee the flexibility that they need at that point in their life, they will give so much more back to you than what you've given them. And I guess same right through.
Yeah, it's an investment in loyalty, I think. I know that one of the reasons I stayed for 31 years with this particular company is that in a very hard time in my life, so I was a single mum for 16 years, when I didn't have support, I didn't live near family either, there was a degree of understanding that if the school rang because my child was sick, I had no other option but to go. But the work would always be made up. Interestingly, my daughter grew up within the business. There was a job that I was in where very occasionally I was on call to come in and do some testing at night because of product failure. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, this only happened once, but at 3 o'clock in the morning, I took my 3-year-old child into work, and she slept with the security guard while I ran the test, which was only half an hour. And then I went home again. Now, I lived very close. It's not ideal, but it was just that opportunity to say, I can do this. There was another occasion where my line manager, a young lady, babysat my child while I did my job. I wouldn't expect every line manager to do that, but it was a beautiful, actually, I can't do this part of your job. You need to do that. It's only an hour. Can I play with Kat while you do the work?
That understanding that we give a working...
Yeah. And I
we
probably
can get that at menopause as well, then...
Exactly. So it's just the, how do we make this work for both of us? Yeah. Those were quite extraordinary incidences, but nonetheless, they showed that the company I was lucky enough to be working with people who had enough understanding to say, okay, there's this job that has to be done, but how can we make it work? Now, she's 34 now, and this is when she was 3 and 4. So it's a long time ago. And I'm sure employee legislation and health and safety has changed a lot since then. But it's the attitude.
Yeah.
It's the how can we make this work? Not how can we get you out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to come and do the work, but how can we come together to create a solution that enables you to work the best way you can possibly work in your current situation, so that we can benefit from all your experience and your knowledge and your work ethic, but we don't try and kill you in the process. We're not trying to give you a performance review that says below expectations because you've had a couple of moments of brain fog in a meeting. It's that sort of understanding. I may forget what I'm saying. I am not less than I was before. I just forgot what I was saying. Men do it too. And we don't even look at them and say, oh, they're menopausal. We would look at them and go, oh, look, he just forgot what he was saying and he's back on track now. But I think when we're women in midlife, people start to go, do you think I should tell? I've had this with a line manager. Do you think I should tell my team member that I think she's menopausal. Please don't do that. Because you're making massive assumptions, and you wouldn't make the same assumption if that had been a man.
Mm.
So I think it's just, let's all open our eyes and ears to what other people are experiencing. This is probably a message for life, actually. And can we just stand with them for a moment or two and see life from their perspective? Both parties. And go,
Yeah.
how do we find the middle ground here? How do we make this work for both of us?
Listen to the individual.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another question I wanted to ask you before we finish up. If you could go back and meet your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give her?
I admit I've been listening to some of your more recent podcasts where people have said, they'd go back to their 18-year-old selves and listen to their 18-year-old self. I'm afraid I'm exactly the opposite. My 18-year-old had been institutionalized through boarding school for many years. I was born into a military family. I was very much, let's say, burdened by duty and expectation at that age. And I had a real burning desire to go to art college. I even managed to circumvent all of the careers advice at school and get a place at an art college. And it didn't require any A-level results. It just required my portfolio. And at that time, the outrage from the adults around me made me buckle in and do something different. So traditional university and into careers, etc. And I don't regret any of it. In hindsight, I'm not that great an artist. I'd never have made a living out of it. But I think I would go back and say, be who you are. Spend time rooting yourself in who you are so that you don't waste the next 35 years trying to be somebody else's shape. And I think there are lots of teenagers who haven't really worked out who they are yet. They might have pushed some boundaries and done some stuff, but sometimes that's with peer pressure. Sometimes that's to rebel against a set of rules that have been put in place either by society or by parents or families, family traditions, etc. I remember going to university and trying just for a little moment to be a rebel, and I dyed a blue streak in my hair and washed it out every time I went home. Because there was no way that was going to be a thing that I brought home to my parents. So I think I would be going back and saying, please anchor yourself in who you are and make decisions from your heart and your soul as well as your head and your sense of duty. That's what I would be saying.
Oh, Liz, the second thing I wrote down when we started talking was authenticity. And that's just what you all through the interview today. Authenticity. All rules are made up. And you can't fail an experiment. You can only get an unexpected outcome. I've loved the lessons that we've got from you today. Thank you so much for being on Scale Her Up.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure, Brenda. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
And thank you to you for listening to Scale Her Up, the Female Entrepreneurs Show. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, and join the Facebook community at Scale Her Up. Connect with me, I'm Dr. Brenda Hector, on social media, and drop me a message to let me know that you're enjoying the podcasts. And I'll finish by reminding you that only 1 in 3 UK entrepreneurs are female, and men are 5 times more likely to scale their business to over $1 million in turnover than women are. When we start and scale our businesses to the same extent as men, it will add 250 billion to the UK economy and provide millions of jobs. Ladies, you can do it and make a massive difference.